Hello again, and welcome back to Lessons from the Table. I finally got that haircut I was talking about, and I've got a couple of things all lined up that I want to talk about. I'm probably going to record another bunch of videos today because I've got a couple of things that are like semi-related. The first one I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to revisit a discussion topic from a couple of videos ago now, with regards to traps and puzzles and, more importantly, single solution puzzles or single solution problems. Because I was kind of angling for a point, and I don't think I made it very well. I have since then got a better grasp on what it is I was trying to say as a DM, and the reason for that is because in the last couple of weeks, I've been designing a lot more puzzles and problems than I usually have, just because of the area that my party is currently in. The video after next is going to talk about that in a bit more detail, because there's kind of been another lesson for me that's come with all that. But I've designed probably more puzzles in the last 2 or 3 weeks than I have for the entire campaign thus far, and the campaign preceding it, which was with the same group. And that's really made me clarify my own approach to puzzles and my own ethos about those single solution puzzles that I was talking about a few episodes prior. So I want to dive right into that. First of all, I think an important distinction needs to be made between a problem and a puzzle. And within puzzles, I would also then say that there are two kinds of puzzle. There are logical puzzles and there are creative puzzles. And the reason I think that's an important distinction to make is because I think it helps better inform when and why a puzzle can be a single solution puzzle, even though the wisdom says that that's a bad thing to do. Because that was the argument I was making in the other video, that single solution puzzles are okay, but only in certain circumstances. And I don't think I explained those circumstances well enough. So I want to do that here now. So first of all, let me distinguish what I mean by logic puzzles and creative puzzles, or logical and creative, logic creativity puzzles, however you want to conjugate those words. A creativity puzzle is like the example I used in that video, the Door of Politeness, where it's a mirror and you had to tell your reflection, please, you first, and your reflection would then step aside and say, no, I insist, after you, and then you could step through the door. That's a creativity puzzle, because the solution, it follows a kind of logic, but it's a lateral thinking kind of logic. It requires the players to apply an amount of creativity to their problem solving. It's not a hard logic problem solving, like, because X is X, Y must be Y, right? There isn't that obvious thread of cause and effect. Once you've done it, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense beforehand. There isn't necessarily things there that make it really, really obvious, right? It's not a math equation. It's a little bit more esoteric than that. Now, as I discussed in that video, you can give clues. You can do things that get your players to come closer to that. You can give them hints that this is how the situation works, such that they can make that logical leap to talking to their reflection and asking it to go before them. And one of the suggestions I gave was, maybe they say something and their own reflection responds. And then suddenly the player's like, wait, I can talk to this thing? Okay. And then you can help move them closer towards it through dialogue, with you playing the player's reflection and then obviously playing their character. But that's still a logical leap. That's still a creative puzzle, because it requires the players to get a bit creative with solutions. And even though that's got one main intended solution, as I talked about in the video, there was another solution that one character used that worked. It felt like it should work given the circumstances, given the situation I'd set up, and I allowed it to work. So I don't really qualify it as necessarily a single solution puzzle. And here's what's important. I think creative puzzles should not be single solution, because those are the ones that get frustrating. Because when you do know the solution, you are equally as likely to go, wow, that's really obvious now that I look at it, as you might go, how the hell was I supposed to guess that? How the hell was I supposed to guess or figure out that I had to ask my reflection to pass past me to cue it to allow me to go past it. How does that make any sense, right? And there's another thing I want to talk about with regards to that, that I'm going to be talking about in the next video, which is introducing your players to the rules of your world. But single solutions for those sorts of puzzles can be frustrating. I also talked about problems. Problems definitely shouldn't have single solutions, in my opinion. Problems should, in fact, be the most open-ended. So when we start breaking it down into these three major categories, we've got problems, which should almost entirely always be multiple solution. There may be situations where they could be single solution. I cannot for the life of me think of one right now. But that even includes combat. Combat is a problem, and there are multiple solutions. Even though most of the time a party will fight their way out, even then there are a myriad of ways you could fight your way out, but also talking your way out is a viable solution as far as I'm concerned. Then you've got creative puzzles. These should realistically be multiple solution, or at least they should be open-ended. If they're single solution, you seriously risk them being frustrating. And then there's logic puzzles. Hard logic puzzles. This is what I want to get into now. If your player comes up to a door, and the door says 2 + 2 equals, and your player pulls out something and scratches 4 by the equal sign, the door will open. It would not have opened with 5. It would not have opened with 3. But it opens with 4, because that's a logic puzzle. It follows the logic of mathematics. When you put this number next to this number, hey presto, it opens. I've had single solution logic puzzles in my games before, because they're hard logic, right? This is you know, a game. This is a puzzle game at that point. This isn't some esoteric, you know, point and click adventure where it's like, what the hell, I can combine the fork with the macaroni to create a ray gun. No, this is The Witness, or Myst, arguably. You know, the puzzles follow a logic. If I move this valve to go from this position to this position, the water will flow left now instead of right. And that's going to allow me to do this thing over here and this thing over here. These puzzles are the easiest in one sense, because 2 + 2 is easy. If you want to make it hard, you've got to introduce far more advanced mathematical concepts in there. If you want to make a logic puzzle more difficult, you have to design a more complex puzzle. And I think that's something not a lot of DMs are willing to do. And I also think that's reasonable, because it's a lot of work. It's a hell of a lot of work to make something that isn't just going to be an instant fix. But these puzzles do exist. They are out there. Something like the 8 Queens puzzle is a great example of this. For those who are unfamiliar, the 8 Queens puzzle is you take an 8x8 chessboard and you have 8 queen pieces. Queens, for those unfamiliar with chess, can move any number of spaces in any direction, forward, back, left, right, and then all 4 diagonals. You need to put all 8 queens on the chessboard such that no queen could attack and take another piece. So they can't be on the same line. That's a logic puzzle. Assuming your players know the rules of chess, that's a hard logic puzzle. There is no creative solution. There is no I cast darkness over the chessboard and now the puzzle doesn't exist anymore, right? That puzzle gets solved when you place all 8 queens in a viable solution. Now, funnily enough, there are actually, strictly speaking, multiple solutions to this puzzle, in that there are multiple different places you could put the queen. But you could set up a more complex version where there's only a limited number of spaces. Maybe some of the alternate solutions are blocked by massive stones on the chessboard and you can't actually put the pieces there. Something like that. You could make it single solution and it would still be solvable. And it's just a logic puzzle. Even if they only solve it through trial and error, that's perfectly feasible. That's perfectly fine. And that would be a good puzzle. That's probably a great one to use. Definitely steal that puzzle. I'll actually put a link to it in the description as well, because one of the beautiful things about the 8 Queens puzzle is you can actually scale it up and down. You can do 6 queens on a 6x6 board. You can do 50 queens on a 50x50 board if you're absolutely bonkers. I put a link into that because it's great to use, and it will actually take a bit of time. This isn't 2 + 2 = 4. It's not an instant, oh yeah, this is so obvious and easy. It probably will take your players a bit of trial and error, unless one of them is already familiar with the problem, which they might be, right? If you've got an avid chess player in your party or a mathematician in your party, then it might not be ideal, but even then, it's not too bad. Even the mathematician maybe has only seen the proof. They're not necessarily looking at chessboards all the time. They'll still have to think about it for a little bit. That's a great logic puzzle, and there's very few that are like that, in my honest opinion. But you can use those and have them be single solution. So when I talk about it being okay to put single solution puzzles in your games, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about puzzles where there is an obvious thread of logic. Puzzles where there are set rules, and if you follow them, you reach the answer. Puzzles that are 2 plus 2 equals. And these tend to be puzzles that rely the most on things like physics and mathematics. And I don't mean that they're all equations, but even something like you need to fill these 3 buckets evenly, and you've got a number of different valves and, different weights and different pulleys. It's a physics puzzle. It's one that you can solve by trying things. Okay, I'm going to put this bucket on this hook, and I'm going to use this valve over here, and then I'm going to run the thing and see how much it fills. Oh, okay, that was twice as much as last time. And they can figure it out, right? The players can figure this out as they go. Which is good, because they don't have to sit down hashing out equations. They don't actually have to sit there and do 2 plus 2 equals and I wonder what it could be. So these puzzles work best when you attach them to a wider mechanism. They tend to be, for that reason, mechanical puzzles. Those ones that exist in real space, that use real mathematical and physical concepts. Water flows downwards. If you want the water to fill the bucket, you must put the source above it. Maybe that's a part of your puzzle. And these are great because we all have an inherent understanding of physics in the real world, right? Gravity pushes things downwards. If you block one channel and leave a second one open, something will flow down the open channel, not the closed one. These are all very obvious concepts. And you could apply these even to something like binary. I do know one friend, he was, at the time of doing this, he was a computer science major, and a number of his players were as well. So he developed a puzzle that played off binary and Boolean logic, using water, using those on-off valves. And his players ate it up. They loved it, because even though they understood all these concepts just like that, it still took a bit of time to solve, because they actually had to move and interact with the real world and try things. Let's turn this valve to this state and this one to here, and actually traverse the dungeon to map out all the logic gates. And once they've done that, they're like, okay, this is an OR gate, and this is a NAND gate, and now I can just put them all into this state and we get the solve. But they still had to do that first, so it still took a bit of time, and they loved it, because it played right into something they already knew, right? You don't have to put something that's totally unfamiliar. If your players do not understand Boolean logic gates, do not put that sort of puzzle in front of them, because otherwise they're going to spend far more time learning the fundamentals of Boolean logic than they are actually solving the puzzle, and that's not going to be fun. But I think a mistake that DMs fall into is go, oh, my players already know how to do this. I shouldn't implement that. I had a very similar situation like that. Well, I mean, I didn't choose to not further do this. I put a code in front of my players. As it happened, one of them had a hobby of learning ciphers, and he instantly recognized this cipher, and they solved it in like 5 minutes. So I came back a couple of sessions later with a new cipher, because now that they'd cracked this one, the militaristic enemy was like, someone's compromised our cipher. We need to develop a new one. So they did. And it was far more abstract, and it played on a lot more concepts. Now, I actually went and learned a bit of ciphering myself, just for the sake of this, which, I mean, I'm willing to do, and not all DMs are. If you're not, then that's perfectly fine. You don't have to be. But I came back with a more complex one. Now, I made a mistake here. I made it too complex, and it took them like 2 hours to solve it. It was not fun. It ground to a halt. Now, it was because I included a couple of logical leaps in there that I shouldn't have. I made a mistake. But what my point is here is, I didn't go, oh, one of my players knows code breaking. I should never put a code in front of them again. If anything, you as a DM ought to take the opposite approach. I've got a player that's into a bit of code breaking. If I give them a real meaty code, they're going to really enjoy themselves. It can be hard, because you kind of feel like you have to be able to outskill your player in that regard to create something that's going to challenge them. But you can also steal. I mean, there are a lot of codes out there. You could just learn a bit about them and find one that you think is interesting and works, and maybe add an extra step into it and make it a little bit more abstract so that they don't recognize it instantly. And then once they do, it'll be a quicker solve from there, but they still actually have to actively break the code. That works. Do that. I would encourage DMs to do that, in fact. So, to recap on all of this, we have three kinds of problems. We have problems, then we have creativity puzzles, and then we have logic puzzles. These first two, problems, which includes everything from combat to crossing a fast-flowing river to getting a key suspended above a chasm to navigating a trap. Then you've got the second one, creativity puzzles. Those two should be open-ended. Single solution problems or creativity puzzles are often not great. For creativity puzzles, single solutions are frustrating. For problems, single solutions just feel railroady. If you've got a combat and your players try to talk their way out of it and you make them roll for persuasion and the dude rolls a natural 20, but you've decided they have to fight this anyway, that sucks. That's not fun. Don't make it single solution. If they were going to have to fight anyway, don't waste their time. Don't make them roll. And don't do that in general. Don't let it be single solution. Don't make it have to be a fight your way out. Sometimes you can go into this going, yeah, I don't think there are other ways to do this aside from fight. That's completely fine. I mean, dungeons, you've got to kill the boss for the most part. But, geez, I don't know, maybe the bard spins an exceptionally convincing story that makes the lich want to change their ways and give up their lame life. And the lich, does the job for the party. All right, let him, I guess. And then at the very end of that, you've got your logic puzzles. They can be single solution. In fact, a lot of the time, they are single solution. And that's fine. So I hope that's been a better kind of deep dive into what I was trying to say a few episodes ago where I talked about single solution puzzles in your games. I hope this gives you something a bit more detailed to work off. And I hope this encourages you as well to explore logic puzzles. They don't come up too much in D&D, I think, because they often require the most clever design from DMs. They are, in my opinion, some of the hardest to design. It's very easy to design a locked door in a pit and a key suspended above it. It's very hard to design a puzzle where you have to bounce light off mirrors and run it through lenses to change colors. But if you can design that latter puzzle, and you can make it really crunchy, you can make it take a good amount of time, that is going to be super satisfying for your players, and it's going to feel just as cool for them as it does for you. You get the satisfaction of them going like, wow, this is a cool puzzle, and they get the satisfaction of solving your cool puzzle. So I do hope you're able to use some of that. That's going to be it for this week. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.